Hurricane Lee has been a large and dangerous Category 4 or 5 for the last 24 hours plus now, and it is moving west-northwestward and expected to make a northward curve, bringing big waves not only to the Caribbean islands, but also portions of the East Coast along with dangerous rip currents. This front coming off the eastern shores next week really matters in terms of the track and intensity of the storm. I have all the details on that, as well as the cool down coming with that front to the United States. That's coming up in this video. Alright, thank you so much for joining me here. As of the evening update on Hurricane Lee, it has 150 mile per hour wind and it's moving west-northwestward at 13 miles per hour. This storm, yes, has weakened a little bit, and it's really been struggling to replace its eye wall, and that's the only thing that's been really hampering the intensity of this storm, but there's really nothing acting against it, and we could certainly see this really re-strengthen and maybe touch Cat 5 strength again as it continues its west-northwestward push. Now, it's expected to definitely remain a major hurricane all the way through the cone, which is 5 days out to Wednesday afternoon. You can see now visible on the cone is that northward shift that's going to occur just before it can start really getting close to the Turks and Caicos or the Bahamas for us here, and it's really going to kind of split the difference between those as well as Bermuda, with Bermuda being on that eastern side. Most of the tropical storm force winds will likely stay north of the islands now as it's looking, but there's still a good 20 to 25 to 30% chance that portions of Puerto Rico as well as the northern Windward Islands could see at least some 40 to 50 mile per hour sustained winds. There's definitely a good chance of at least some brief tropical storm force wind gusts, but I think the biggest threat for these islands is definitely going to be the waves, which could be 15 feet or so at the max as the storm pushes on by. Now, the track of this storm after it shifts northward is up to the low-pressure system and attached front coming off the USA. You can see that cold front really pushing out over the open waters, and the intensity of that front also matters because if it's very weak, then this system could very well just break through it and still go up into the New England states regardless. It does look like it's going to be strong enough to bring a good cool down, though, into portions of the eastern half of the country, which is why this looks like it will have a pretty decent effect on the storm. So let's actually talk about that new front. You can see it getting going here. This is your weekend setup as we go into your Saturday. We have one lingering front on the East Coast. That'll be gone by the time Lee makes its northward turn. Note, though, that it is the reason for that northward turn. It will be degrading over the waters, and the southerly wind flow with it will force Lee northward, but it's a secondary front that's keeping this from moving into the southeast and will make it only hit the northeast at the worst for us in a weakening state. So let's track this out. You can see as we go towards your September 10th, we've got that lingering front. Again, it's going to be a pretty messy weekend for portions of the east with that lingering boundary, but here's the front that's going to make all the difference. That's the one I just labeled front number 2, and it's still back out over the central states this weekend, bringing pretty stormy weather at times, even into your Sunday. You can see the northeast also getting in on more of that stormy weather, but overall, this is going to be a pretty tame weekend in terms of extreme weather across the country. We're just looking at the chance for some spotty to scattered showers and storms that could be severe. Notice that front really beginning to get itself together by the time we go towards our Monday, and then here we go again, right as we get into the midweek time frame. That's when this storm system's really going to be heading towards the east coast, and that's going to be at the same time that our Hurricane Lee is going to be moving on up to the north, which is why this will play such a role in the movement of Lee as it makes its way on over. You can see Lee in the bottom right hand corner of your screen. And we'll take a look at some of the possibilities with this front with Lee in just a minute. But before I do that, I do want to talk about the relief in terms of heat relief that we're going to see into portions of the country. Temperatures will turn quite nice. Anywhere you're seeing the blues on your screen, this is as we go into your Tuesday night. Temperatures are going to be anywhere from around 5 to 15 degrees below average from portions of the upper Midwest as well as portions of the central states. Heading on over towards the east, and yes, that will fill in into portions of the Carolinas as well as the East Coast as the week goes on. This is not an extreme cool down, but it is certainly quite nice and very much so welcome considering the dangerous heat that has been going on for many of these areas over the course of the last few weeks. Now let's take a look at some of these temperatures played out. Here we go through your Saturday. Your Saturday afternoon highs will be quite hot. We're still looking at some 100-degree readings into portions of Texas, but notice overall fairly tame across much of the country. But look at some of these 50s we get going on Saturday night going into Sunday into the upper Midwest. We'll see that again as we go Sunday night into Monday. In fact, some low 50s getting going into the Dakotas and Minnesota with some plenty of 60s to go around pushing into the Great Lakes region. And we'll see that really get even better as you go into your Tuesday morning as well as your Wednesday morning. Look at that, some 40s creeping into the Great Lakes. We'll see some 50s beginning to push eastward into the Ohio Valley, and eventually some of the 50s and 60s might make their first run of the fall into portions of the southeast, or when I say the fall, I mean the first fall front to do this. Yes, we will see some 50s move into the southeast as well with this, and really just good to see some of those yellows and green colors colors on the screen and at least some relief from that dangerous heat that we have been, seeing over the last few weeks. 6 to 10 day temperature outlook looks like this. Again, you can see how that cool down as we head towards the middle of the month will be pretty much smack dab over portions of the southeastern United States as well as the Ohio Valley. But a ridge will be building back behind it into portions of the Pacific Northwest and really filling in into some of those areas into portions of the upper Midwest where we initially saw that cool down come on in. So note that that will be really a short-term deal for you there. Still hanging on to that cool down there in the Carolinas as well as Appalachia for us there, but overall we're going to see more heat starting to build back in from the west. But hey, this is the best relief we've seen into portions of the east as well as the central parts of the country for the last few weeks. We definitely need to soak this up and enjoy it if you live in these areas. Now, let's talk about some of the hurricane scenarios that we could see with this front. A faster front bringing cooler air and rushing on off towards the east at a fairly quick pace. That would definitely make this storm be more likely to head on off towards Nova Scotia. So Hurricane Lee would have a much higher chance of heading on off towards the Newfoundland direction and racing off very quickly in that manner. What it would do, no matter what, we're going to see very big swells hit portions of the northeast as well as New England states. But this would definitely keep direct impacts such as wind as well as very heavy rain from hitting that area. A slower front, which is kind of what we're seeing, this lagging behind a little bit or weakening a bit as it comes closer. This is a slightly more likely scenario. It means that the storm would really graze on up into the New England coastline, but the models have been showing some slightly weaker trends with this storm as it progresses up in that area, so I don't want anybody to panic seeing this scenario. This is definitely something that is manageable, but definitely we could see a very weak hurricane or tropical system moving up into that area. This is my projected path for Lee as I see it right now. Really disregard anything you see over the waters unless you live in Bermuda. Of course, this will be near you. But really what we're talking about here is that the highest chance of a landfall is going to come into portions of Nova Scotia. But far eastern Maine could at least see some chance of a direct landfall with the system. But again, it's way too early on to figure out exactly what's going to happen on. I showed you the scenarios so we know what the possibilities are, and we'll know a lot more as we get closer in time. So the best thing to do for now is monitor those forecasts from your local officials. Stay tuned to my channel as well as looking at information on nhc.noaa.gov, which is the National Hurricane Center. These sites will have all the best information for you to catch the latest. But waves could be huge regardless. This is the GFS model, not showing really a direct hit to Maine for us, but look at some of the waves that could come up here into portions of Nova Scotia, but also our east coast. You can see some 10 to 20 foot breakers hitting the Cape Cod region, but any of those purple colors you see that are basically right offshore, that's where we could see, with any western wobble from what this is showing, we could see some 20 to 30 foot waves crashing on shore, and that could certainly result in some coastal issues as well as erosion, which is something we need to watch. But the rip currents will still be dangerous. Look at this. Even though the system will be well past the southeast, some 10 to 20 foot waves in that area with the chance for rip currents. Thanks so much for watching. Here are the credits, and have a great day.